I used to believe family existed to shield you. I learned how wrong I was the night my younger sister's fingers twisted into my hair like talons. Before I could react, she yanked me backward and slammed my head into the wall. The crack echoed through the quiet hallway, and a white-hot flash burst behind my eyes. My knees gave out, and I collapsed onto the cold tile, cheek pressed against the floor as warm blood trickled along my temple. Rowan knelt beside me, her face inches from mine. Her perfume, the designer kind our parents bought her every birthday, filled my lungs as she whispered, "You don't deserve anything. You never did." Then she stood, smoothed her blouse, and walked away with calm, measured steps, as though she hadn't just left her sister barely conscious on the ground. She believed the darkness had hidden her. She believed she had won. But Rowan didn't know someone else had been watching. Someone who had promised our dying grandmother they would protect me. Someone who recorded everything. And when that person entered the attorney's office the next morning, the truth would finally begin its slow, satisfying burn into the light. My name is Melissa Carter. I'm 40 years old, living in Asheville, North Carolina, and I work as a hospice liaison helping families navigate the most fragile moments of their lives. I thought I understood isolation. I thought I understood invisibility. But I didn't truly comprehend either until I returned home in the autumn of 2018 to bury my grandmother. Just 2 months earlier, the day I was promoted to program director, I had called my mother, excitement trembling in my hands. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "That's nice, Melissa," she said, barely listening. "Did you hear Rowan just secured a major development deal? We're taking her out to celebrate this weekend." She didn't ask about my promotion. She didn't congratulate me. The call ended in under 2 minutes. I had grown accustomed to this. What I never understood was why. For as long as I can remember, my parents treated me as though I lived at the edge of their vision, someone tolerated, not embraced. Missed calls went unreturned. Holiday gatherings happened without my knowledge, discovered only through photos online. Birthday cards I sent were never acknowledged. I spent years wondering what I had done wrong. Rowan, 3 years younger and endlessly admired, had always been the family's shining star. Beautiful, charming, and wildly successful in commercial real estate, she drew attention like a magnet. When she entered a room, my parents lit up as if she were the sun itself. When I entered, their eyes flicked toward me like they were checking whether a window had been left open. 3 years ago, something unusual happened. My grandmother called me close to midnight, her voice trembling. "Melissa," she said, "Rowan told me you don't want to visit anymore. She said you think I'm too much of a burden." My heart froze. I had never said anything remotely like that. "Grandma, no," I told her. "I would never say that. I love you." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "I know, sweetheart. That's why I called." She never explained what made her doubt Rowan's words, but something fragile in her tone stayed with me. When Grandma passed, I drove home to help sort through her belongings. The house felt hollow without her. What surprised me most was the warmth I received from her longtime neighbor, Mrs. Adler, who embraced me like a daughter. "Your grandmother talked about you constantly," she told me. "She said you were the only honest one in the family." Her expression dimmed. "She was worried about something before she died. She asked me to watch out for you." Tactions. Inside the house, Rowan moved with a strange urgency, repeatedly glancing toward Grandma's study where important papers were kept. Later, I overheard her whispering to our mother in the kitchen. "I've handled everything," she murmured. "She won't be a problem." My stomach tightened. That night, unable to sleep, I opened Grandma's old cedar cabinet, searching for keepsakes. Behind a loose board, I found an envelope with my name written in her frail handwriting. I felt the world tilt as I slid my thumb beneath the seal and unfolded the letter. What I read inside didn't just reveal the truth. It shattered every belief I had about my family and the life I thought I understood. The letter was 3 pages long, written in my grandmother's fragile, looping handwriting. The paper was thin and worn at the corners, as if she had held it repeatedly before finding the courage to hide it away. I sat on the cold floor of her study, my back pressed against the built-in cabinet, and began to read. By the second paragraph, my hands were trembling so violently I could hardly keep the pages steady. "Melissa," she wrote, You need to know the truth before it's too late. For more than 10 years, Rowan has been poisoning this family against you. She told your mother you mocked her behind her back, that you blamed her for every disappointment in your life. She told your father you were embarrassed by him, that you made jokes about his work when you were with friends. She told me you no longer wished to visit, that I had become a burden. I believed her at first. Your parents still do, but eventually something felt wrong. I began calling you, and you always answered every single time. And there was warmth in your voice, real warmth, not the cold disdain Rowan described. I watched your sister's face when she spoke about you, and what I saw chilled me. There was no sadness when she said you had abandoned us. There was satisfaction. I paused, pressing the letter to my chest as the room tilted slightly. The ache in my ribs grew sharper, but I forced myself to continue. 2 years ago, the letter went on, Rowan came to me with a property transfer form. She claimed it was routine, part of reorganizing the family trust. She urged me to sign quickly because the bank was closing soon. Something felt off, so I pretended to sign, changing my signature just enough to raise suspicion. When the bank reviewed it, they called. Melissa, your sister forged my name on a different version. She was trying to shift ownership of the house to herself before I passed. The bank rejected it and sent me the original. I kept it as proof. I never told your parents because they would not have believed me. Rowan has wrapped them around her finger so tightly they cannot see anything clearly. The final paragraph broke something open inside me. Melissa, you are not the granddaughter who walked away. You are the granddaughter who was erased. And Rowan did it deliberately, methodically, for over a decade. I am sorry I didn't see it sooner. I am sorry I ever believed her lies. You deserve far better than what this family gave you. I love you, and I have always loved you. I hope the truth will one day set you free. Your grandmother, Evelyn. I sat on that cold hardwood floor for a long time, the house silent around me while my thoughts screamed. Every memory I had twisted into a new shape, every ignored phone call, every forgotten birthday, every strained conversation. The way my mother's tone always tightened when I called. The way my father barely looked at me at the funeral. None of it was because I had failed them. It was because Rowan had fed them lies until they no longer recognized me. I was not the overlooked daughter. I was the erased daughter. The grief hit first, thick and suffocating. Then came the anger, deep, burning, rising through my body like a tide I could no longer hold back. I wanted to shake my parents awake and force them to read every word, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Rowan would twist the truth again, just as she always had. I needed to be smarter. With shaking hands, I photographed each page front and back, ensuring every line was clear. Then I emailed Mr. Harrison, my grandmother's attorney. I found this letter tonight, I wrote. I believe it is relevant to tomorrow's reading. Please keep it confidential. After pressing send, I didn't know whether any of it would change what was coming, but I knew one thing. I refused to disappear again. I was still holding the letter when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rowan appeared in the doorway wearing pale silk pajamas, her hair perfect even at this late hour. She must have come downstairs for water, but when she saw me sitting on the floor with tears on my cheeks and papers clutched in my hands, she stopped cold. Her eyes locked onto the letter. In a single heartbeat, her expression shifted surprise, calculation, then a cold, controlled fury. "Give me that," she said. Her voice was calm, but the edge beneath it cut like a blade. I rose slowly, holding the letter behind my back. "No. I know what you did, Rowan. The lies you fed Mom and Dad, what you told Grandma, the forged paperwork, I know all of it." A flicker, fear or irritation passed through her eyes. Then she lunged, her fingers clamped around my wrist, twisting hard as she tried to rip the letter from my hand. I clung to it with everything I had. "Let go," she hissed, her nails digging into my skin. When I didn't, she changed tactics. She grabbed a fistful of my hair and slammed my head into the wall. The crack echoed through the quiet house. Pain burst behind my eyes, sharp and blinding. My vision blurred, my knees buckled, and I slid down the wall, collapsing onto the floor. Through the ringing in my ears, I felt her pry the letter from my weakening grip. She crouched beside me. Her perfume, floral, expensive, filled my lungs. "Do you think anyone will believe you?" she whispered, her voice soft and poisonous. I've spent 10 years making sure they don't. You're nothing, Melissa, and after tomorrow you won't even have Grandma's money. She tucked the letter into her pocket and walked away without looking back. What she didn't know was that the living room window had been left open because of the warm summer night, and she certainly didn't know that Mrs. Adler, restless and unable to sleep, had stepped outside to check on the house. From her yard, she heard the shouting. She saw the struggle. She watched Rowan slam my head into the wall and lean down to whisper those terrible words. With trembling hands, she recorded the final moments on her phone. She not only had the video, she also had the copy of the letter my grandmother had entrusted to her months earlier, instructing her to act only if Rowan ever tried to hurt me. Rowan walked away believing she had destroyed the only evidence. She had no idea 2 copies existed, or that the woman who held them would walk into the attorney's office the next morning and dismantle her perfect world. I barely slept. My head throbbed with every heartbeat, and whenever I closed my eyes, I saw Rowan's face hovering over mine. When morning came, I forced myself to shower, dress, and make myself presentable. A dark bruise had begun to bloom at my temple, but I concealed it as best I could. The letter was gone, stolen, but the photos I had taken were already in Mr. Harrison's inbox. I had to trust that would be enough. I didn't yet know Mrs. Adler had already set something far more powerful in motion. 30 minutes before the will reading, she walked into Mr. Harrison's office wearing her best Sunday outfit. She handed him the sealed envelope my grandmother had given her. "She told me to open this only if someone hurt Melissa," she said. "Last night, someone did. Axted NEM." Harrison read the letter, his face darkening with each line. Then she showed him the video. When Rowan's voice echoed through the room, his jaw tightened. "Delay the family 15 minutes, he instructed his assistant. "I need time to prepare." By the time the Carter family arrived, Harrison was ready. I wasn't. The conference room felt small and airless as I sat on one side of the table, hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. Across from me, Rowan sat between our parents, her posture elegant, her expression solemn. In her lap rested a leather folder she kept touching lightly, as though reassuring herself her lies were still intact. My parents sat with their arms crossed, and when their eyes met mine, something inside me twisted. What I saw there wasn't confusion, it was hostility. Even now, after everything, they still believed Rowan. They still looked at me, as if I were the one who had broken this family. "Mr. Harrison entered the conference room and took his seat at the head of the long table. Calm, composed, unreadable, he sifted through several documents before clearing his throat. "I, Evelyn May Carter, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. I leave my home, my savings, and all personal belongings to my granddaughter, Melissa Diane Carter." The silence that followed pressed against my chest. I couldn't breathe. Harrison continued, his voice steady. Evelyn added a personal note. "Melissa is the only person in this family who never came to me asking for anything. She is also the only one who never lied to me." Rowan shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. "Absolutely not," she snapped. She opened her leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. "My grandmother was manipulated," she announced. "I have proof. Emails where Melissa demanded money. Text messages threatening to cut contact unless she changed her will. A handwritten note where she admits pressuring her." She slapped the forged documents onto the table. My parents leaned forward, nodding as though every lie confirmed what they already believed. My stomach knotted. None of those messages were mine. The handwriting wasn't mine. She had built an entire case out of fabrications, constructed carefully over months. Before Rowan could speak again, Mr. Harrison raised his hand. "Before reviewing your evidence, Miss Carter, I have something to present." He opened his briefcase and withdrew a sealed envelope. This letter was written by Evelyn and given to a third party. She instructed it be delivered only if anyone attempted to harm Melissa or challenge her will. Rowan's face tightened. Harrison opened the envelope and read aloud. Each line peeled another layer off, Rowan's carefully crafted image, her lies about me, the stories she fed our parents, the forged property document she tried to slip past our grandmother 2 years earlier. With every sentence, Rowan's composure crumbled, her face went pale, her fingers curled against the table. Evelyn kept the original forgery, Harrison said. She anticipated someone might use fabricated evidence today. He looked directly at her. Would you still like to present your folder? Rowan's voice cracked. It's fake. Melissa manipulated her. You know I would never do something like this, right? She looked desperately at our parents, but neither spoke. I stood slowly. My legs were shaking, but my voice held steady. I didn't manipulate anyone. Last night, after I found Grandma's letter, Rowan attacked me. She slammed my head into the wall and stole it. She thought she'd destroyed the only copy. I glanced toward the door. She was wrong. The door opened, and Mrs. Adler stepped inside in her Sunday best, her expression calm and unwavering. She walked to Mr. Harrison's desk and placed her phone down gently. My name is Margaret Adler, she said. Evelyn asked me to look out for Melissa. Last night, I saw exactly what Rowan is capable of. Harrison connected her phone to the display screen. The video played. Rowan grabbing my hair. Rowan slamming my head into the wall. Rowan leaning close, whispering venom. You're nothing, Melissa. You've always been nothing. My mother let out a choked sob. My father stared at the floor. Rowan stood frozen, her mouth open, her entire arsenal of fabricated evidence forgotten on the table. Everything she built, every lie, every manipulation collapsed in front of her. And as I watched the truth settle over the room, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a deep, exhausted relief. For 40 years, I believed I was the problem. Now, I finally knew the truth. It was never me. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But the video was only the beginning of Rowan's unraveling. After investigators examined her evidence folder, they uncovered fabricated emails, doctored messages, and forged documents, undeniable proof of calculated fraud. Everything she had built over the last decade was about to collapse. The days after the will, reading blurred into police interviews, meetings with attorneys, and long, sleepless nights. The morning after the confrontation in Mr. Harrison's office, I filed assault charges. The video Mrs. Adler recorded showed everything. The attack, the stolen letter, the whispered cruelty that replayed in my mind each time I tried to sleep. What began as a straightforward assault case quickly grew into something far more serious. Forensic experts traced the emails I supposedly sent to an account Rowan created under a false identity. The text messages she intended to present as evidence had been digitally altered, dates manipulated, and words replaced. The handwritten confession, meant to mimic my script, was proven a forgery by a document analyst. Every piece of evidence Rowan had intended to use to overturn the will was a lie, crafted meticulously over months. 3 weeks later, the lead prosecutor called me to her office. She was a steady woman in her 50s, with kind eyes that softened her no-nonsense demeanor. She slid a thick folder toward me. This isn't a one-time lapse, she said. Your sister has been committing fraud within your family for years. The assault is only the beginning. They had reviewed the property transfer Rowan attempted 2 years earlier, the forged signature she used to try to take my grandmother's house. While that specific fraud couldn't be prosecuted due to timing, it established what the prosecutor called a pattern of deliberate deception. Rowan now faced charges of assault, attempted fraud, and evidence tampering, with more possible as the investigation continued. The consequences came swiftly. Her real estate firm terminated her within a week of the video circulating. Someone had leaked it, and within days it spread across local social media. Her employer cited reputational damage and fired her immediately. Her boyfriend of 2 years, a successful architect she'd been grooming for a long-term future, discovered the truth as well. Rowan had told him for years that I was unstable, jealous, and manipulative. She claimed I had stolen jewelry during our grandmother's illness and only returned for the inheritance. When he saw the video and read the investigative findings, he ended the relationship on the spot and blocked her number. Friends who once admired her polished success began distancing themselves. Calls went unanswered, invitations vanished. The woman who always had a full social calendar suddenly found herself alone. To pay her mounting legal fees, she sold her downtown apartment and, from what I later learned, rented a small studio on the outskirts of Asheville while awaiting trial. The sister who had spent a decade making me invisible had become someone no one wanted to see. 2 weeks after the will reading, my mother called. Her voice trembled with tears. "We didn't know, Melissa. Rowan told us so many things. She said you were angry with us, that you didn't want to be part of the family. We believed her. We're so sorry." I was silent, letting her words settle. Part of me had waited 10 years to hear them. Another part felt nothing but exhaustion. When she finished, I finally spoke. "Mom, I called you every month for 10 years, every single month. And every time, you sounded like you couldn't wait to hang up. Did you ever once ask whether what Rowan said was true?" Silence stretched long. "Did you ever wonder why I would supposedly say cruel things about you while still calling, still trying to visit, still sending birthday cards you never acknowledged?" Another silence. Heavier. "I'm not angry at Rowan anymore," I said quietly. "She's sick. Something in her is broken. But I am angry at you and Dad." She lied. "Yes. But you chose to believe her without ever checking with me. For 10 years you never once asked." My mother began to cry, but I continued. "I need time away from all of you," I said gently but firmly. "Please don't call me. When I'm ready, I'll reach out." I hung up before my mother could respond. Then I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the wall as 10 stolen years settled on my chest like a weight I wasn't sure I could lift. 3 weeks later, a knock sounded at my door. When I opened it, my father stood in the hallway. He looked as if he had aged a decade since the will reading, shoulders slumped, eyes red-rimmed, hands trembling slightly. He didn't ask to come in. He simply began speaking. "I've spent the last 3 weeks going through everything," he said, his voice rough. "Every phone call you made, every text you sent that I ignored. Every time you reached out and I pushed you away because Rowan told me you'd said something cruel about your mother. What comes the days?" He swallowed hard. "Your grandmother tried to warn me 2 years ago. She said Rowan wasn't who we thought she was. She said something was wrong, that your sister was hurting you. I told her she was confused. I told her to stop stirring up trouble." Tears tracked through the gray stubble on his chin as he went on. "I chose Rowan's word over yours, over your grandmother's. I dismissed her as if she were losing her mind. He met my eyes, really met them for the first time in years. I could have called you. One phone call. But I didn't. I believed what was easiest." His voice broke. "That's not Rowan's fault, Melissa. That's mine. I failed you. And I'll spend the rest of my life knowing that." He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't offer excuses. He simply stood there, an old man broken by his own choices, giving me the truth I had waited 40 years to hear. I cried not because I forgave him, and not because everything suddenly made sense. I cried because someone in my family finally saw me without requiring proof, evidence, or explanation. Someone finally believed me. I told him I needed time. He nodded and left quietly, walking down the hallway with slow, heavy steps. A few days later, I returned to my grandmother's house to sort through her belongings. In the attic, behind stacks of old photo albums, I found a wooden box with a note taped to the lid in her shaky handwriting. "For Melissa, when you're ready." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of letters, everyone addressed to me, none ever sent. I carried the box downstairs and sat at the kitchen table, where she used to make me hot chocolate on winter mornings. As I read the first letter, something inside me shifted. These were the words she hadn't been able to say out loud, the truths she saved for the moment she hoped would finally free me. 3 months passed between that discovery and the day Rowan faced judgment. To avoid a public trial that would reveal the full extent of her deception, she accepted a plea deal. 200 hours of community service, 2 years of probation, $30,000 in restitution paid directly to me, and mandatory psychological counseling for what prosecutors called a pattern of pathological deceptive behavior. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, designer clothes replaced with something plain, her perfect hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She never looked at me once. Separately, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission reviewed her conduct, the forgeries, the fraud, the documented attempts to manipulate family assets. Her license was permanently revoked. The career she flaunted at every family gathering was gone. With mounting legal fees and no support system left, she sold her downtown apartment and eventually relocated to a small town in Nebraska to live with a distant cousin. The sister who once controlled every narrative now had nothing, no audience, no power, no pedestal. That, I realized, was her true punishment. But her path was no longer mine to follow. I had my own life to rebuild. And the letters in my grandmother's box, the love she had never stopped offering me, became the foundation of everything that came next. One letter said my grandmother had taken the senior shuttle 3 hours to attend my college graduation. She had sat in the back row, afraid of making my parents uncomfortable, and cried when they called my name. Another letter described how proud she was when I got my first job at the senior center. Mrs. Adler had told her about it, and she wrote that she couldn't sleep that night because her heart felt too full. There were letters about the charity drive I organized for homeless veterans 2 years earlier, something I'd never mentioned to anyone. She had seen my picture in the local paper, clipped it out, and kept it tucked in her wallet. That alone made my throat tighten. One letter, dated 5 years ago, broke me open. She wrote, "Rowan told your parents you were ashamed of this family, but I saw you wearing my necklace in every photo Mrs. Adler showed me. A daughter ashamed of her family wouldn't wear her grandmother's necklace close to her heart." I always knew the truth. Another, written just months before she passed, said, "You don't need them to see you, sweetheart. I see you. I have always seen you. I'm proud of you, not despite your family, but in spite of them." That takes a strength most people never discover. I pressed that letter to my chest and made a decision. I kept my grandmother's house not to live in, but as a sanctuary. A place I could return to when the world felt heavy. Every weekend, I restored it slowly, the way she would have wanted. I repainted the porch, her favorite shade of blue, planted the flowers she loved, and hung her photos throughout the rooms. Each small task felt like stitching myself back together. I also created something called the Evelyn Carter Foundation, a scholarship fund for young people who had been overlooked, dismissed, or isolated by their own families, yet kept going anyway. The first recipient was a young woman from rural Tennessee, whose story echoed mine so closely it felt fated. She was the scapegoat, the unfavored child, the one blamed for everything but who kept trying anyway. When I handed her the scholarship check, she burst into tears and hugged me tightly. "No one has ever believed in me before," she whispered. "Someone always has," I told her. "You just hadn't met them yet." As for my parents, I set boundaries firm, non-negotiable ones. Contact would be limited, and only when I initiated it. Meetings would be in public places. And if they mentioned Rowan or made excuses for her behavior, I would walk away. Our first meeting was at a small downtown coffee shop. My mother looked fragile, older than I remembered, her hands wrapped around a cup she never drank from. My father's eyes were tired, bruised by guilt and sleepless nights. I told them plainly, "You don't get credit for believing me now. You only get the chance to prove you've changed. And that chance can be revoked at any time." "Grevers 8. My mother nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. My father said quietly, "We understand. We'll earn it." Whether they would remained to be seen. But for the first time in my life, the terms were mine. One warm September evening, I stood on my grandmother's porch watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and coral. The old oak tree she planted the year I was born rustled in the breeze. I held the last letter from her box written 2 weeks before she died, words shaky but full of love. "My dearest Melissa," it began. "If you're reading this, the truth has finally come out. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I was afraid of tearing the family apart, not realizing Rowan had already done that. She just made sure you took the blame. You are not the daughter who failed. You are the daughter who was stolen from us, and that is not your shame to carry. Live your life now not to prove anything, but because you deserve happiness. Wherever I am proud of you." I folded the letter and pressed it to my heart. The evening breeze carried the scent of oak leaves and the faintest trace of her cologne. For 40 years, I believed I was unworthy of love. Now I knew the truth. I had always been enough. They were the ones who failed, and I didn't need anyone else to tell me my worth. I finally knew it myself. If you've followed my story to the end, thank you. Sharing these wounds wasn't easy, but surviving them has shown me a strength I never knew I had. I hope my journey reminds you that no one deserves to be erased, silenced, or blamed for another person's cruelty. If you felt connected to any part of my experience, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here. Your encouragement helps more than you know. And if you're rooting for me, let me know I'm learning to accept support, one honest moment at a time.